The March Madness edition of Todd's Odds with our sports betting analyst, Todd Fuhrman. It is brought to you by FanDuel. Todd, great to see you. It's been a couple of weeks. How have you been?
I'm doing well, Jay. Had a chance to get a little refreshed. I promised you a clean-cut look heading into the NCAA tournament, and I'll have plenty of time to grow out the playoff beard and a little bit of the mullet that I was sporting the last time we talked a little shop.
Yeah, you look great. You look collegiate, I'd say. Speaking of college, let's talk college basketball. UConn, the favorite on the men's side, +7, +370. They could be the first school to repeat as NCAA champion since Florida in 2007. Do you believe they will repeat, Todd? And if not, who do you want to put your money on for this tournament?
Look, Jay, UConn is a worthy favorite. I mean, this is a roster that had a ton of depth last year in their run to the national championship, and they brought back a lot of those pieces that had to step up into primary roles, most notably Tristan Newton. But at the same time, for me in this business, it's all about price, and at a shade less than 4-1. You mentioned how long it's been since we've seen a repeat national champion. We have to go back to 2016 to find the last time a team that won the national title even got to the second weekend of the tournament. UConn checks all the boxes, but the price isn't there for me. If I'm looking to make a case for one of the shorter price teams on the board, Kelvin Sampson and the Houston Cougars eventually have to get over the hump. Maybe that Big 12 championship defeat will wake them up a little bit. They'll be refocused, and I think the Cougars make a little bit more sense as a favorite than UConn does in that similar price range.
Let's talk about Canadians, specifically Toronto's Zach Edey and the Purdue Boilermakers. We remember last year they were a #1 seed, and then they lose to a 16 seed. Only the second time that's happened in tournament history. Now they're the third favorite at +700. Do you feel they might go on a long run this year, Todd, or could it be another early exit?
You know, Jay, a lot of people making the comparison to that Virginia team, hoping that one and done is a 16 seed in terms of losing that particular game to winning the national champion. But Purdue has, the distinction of being the largest upset victim in NCAA tournament history. They were a 23.5-point favorite in last year's opening round matchup. And I just don't have the confidence in Matt Painter getting this team deep enough into the tournament where they'll have an opportunity to get to the school's first Final Four, let alone win a national championship. Zach Edey is outstanding in the middle, and he is an absolute load for other teams to contend with. But you need guard play this time of year. And I'm not sure Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer provide that dynamic. So I'm going to force Purdue to prove me wrong. I don't think the Boilermakers have what it takes to win the national title.
All right. Everyone loves a Cinderella story. Is there a Cinderella favorite you have this year that could ruin everyone's bracket, Todd Fuhrman?
I'll give you a trio of teams, Jay, that I think are interesting value propositions. And when you look at the NCAA tournament, typically we see a team of 5 seed or higher find their way into the Final Four. You do see cream rise to the top in the final 2 games. But 3 teams that I'm looking at, Creighton is one coming out of the Big East. It's a league that was extremely tough from top to bottom all season long. And when you look at the Jays, Marquette, and UConn, I think Creighton's a team with their loss to Providence. They'll be able to refocus and start playing some of their best basketball when it matters most. And I'll take a pair of teams out on the West Coast that used to dwell in the same conference, but now hone their crafts in different leagues. Gonzaga, they don't have the weight of the world on their shoulders as a favorite this year. They will have their hands full with McNeese in the opening round. And I think the BYU Cougars, this is a team that gets a little bit of a Cinderella story in Duquesne, could set up a potential second-round matchup with the Fighting Illini. And I think BYU, when they're clicking, can be a team to break up a lot of people's brackets. Don't be surprised if the Cougars are playing deep into the Sweet 16 and maybe even a Cinderella story to the Final Four.
All right, let's go to the women's side. The women's odds brought to us by FanDuel as well. South Carolina, overwhelming favorite, Todd. Overwhelming, -145. Second, Iowa, Caitlin Clark's team, +700. Do you like those odds for Caitlin Clark after her historic season? And do you like her chances to end her NCAA career as a national champion?
Credit to Coach Staley and what she's been able to build, an absolute juggernaut in South Carolina, kind of replacing Gino Auriemma as the preeminent coach in the women's game right now. You mentioned Caitlin Clark, and she is must-see TV, but that price a little bit too short. I'm not sure Caitlin Clark has a Carmelo Anthony-type run that we saw from the Orange way back in 2003. I just don't like her supporting cast enough. But if you're looking a little bit further down the odds board and you want to take a flyer, the USC Trojans at 30-1, awfully intriguing for me. They have a tandem of scorers that can light it up at a moment's notice. When you're talking about Juju Watkins and Mackenzie Forbes, That talented tandem in the backcourt could be a thorn in anyone's side. And I think if we're going away from the South Carolinas and the Iowas of the world, the USC Trojans would be my team to watch.
All right, the University of Spoiled Children. I love it, Todd. You can watch all the action in the NCAA tournament on the men's and the women's side on TSN and TSN+. Todd, enjoy the madness.
Hey, it is always a pleasure. It's one of the best times of year. And this time next week, Jay, we'll be talking about the field of 68 whittled down to the Sweet 16.
Can't wait.